Welcome to the Jewelry Journey, exploring the hidden world of art around you. Because every piece of art has a story, and jewelry is no exception.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jewelry Journey podcast.
This is the second part of a two-part episode. If you haven't heard part one, please head to thejewelryjourney.com. Today, my guest is Carole Tanenbaum, speaking to us from Toronto. She and her husband have been collectors of everything, including vintage costume jewelry, for years. And she herself has written 2 books on the subject of vintage costume jewelry. Fabulous Fakes is the first one, and the newest book is a book on Schreiner jewelry. Schreiner, Masters of 20th Century Costume Jewelry. Now, each week she holds an auction of vintage costume jewelry, and she'll tell us all about that. Welcome back. It sounds, you've looked at 1,000,001 pieces. I understand that. I guess I was under the impression that your auctions were weekly to get to, when I say get rid of it, if you have 40,000 pieces.
But no. But what I do occasionally is I deaccession my earlier pieces through a couple of the national and international auction places who I trust. And I do that because if they're sitting in my drawers and not doing anything, it's not that I lost respect for them. It's that I want other people to enjoy them. So I would say twice a year, I have an auction at Ripley's auction. I have an auction here at Waddington's auction. When we were selling our toys, because we're at an age now where we have to start thinking about where these are going. I did it at Miller & Miller in Canada, a wonderful auction house. So those are the types of auctions, and that's the reason why I do them. But they're only occasional, and I always post them on my different sites so that the public is aware of that.
So where do you find the pieces that you do buy? Where do you find them? Just looking around and going to these places on the outskirts, or where?
We first of all, we are very fortunate because people know my name, they know about me, and so I'm offered pieces on many occasions. And I'm even buying back pieces from people who don't wear them anymore and want to pass them back on to me. But I would say that it's just by happenstance. We love antiquing, so it doesn't matter whether we find or we don't find. It's getting much harder, as I told you, because there's fewer outlets. A lot of the small antique dealers just went under, and they don't have places where they can show their pieces other than the net. But I do think that the net now is the best place to look outside of shopping for them. But if you're shopping for them, don't have high hopes, because the very high end are being really bought out by savvy collectors.
Well, I guess that's something that crossed my mind, is how, sometimes, like you say, the pieces can go for thousands of dollars. What have you ever overpaid, do you think? Was just love something so much that you paid more than you thought you could get back at some point, or whatever?
I wouldn't use the word overpaid. I would use the word I paid more than I expected to. Okay. Because if I want a piece, I get it. And I haven't been wrong so far, but I if I'm wrong, so be it. I feel that it's the right way to think about it. If you can afford it and you pitched it at a higher price and you got it, that's fine, because who knows what it's going to be in the future. And that was a good lesson also for me, because a couple of pieces that I really overdid in my purchase today are worth 4 times the amount that when I originally bought them.
Wow. So tell us the story about the books then. What was?
I will. So what really started my business career was that at the very beginning in the 80s, I was showing my pieces in trunk shows in hotels and for charities, but I really wasn't a business. But in about 1990, I pitched my collection to Holt Renfrew in Toronto, the equivalent of Neiman Marcus. And there was a wonderful director there at the time who I pitched to, and he was quiet and he was thinking about it. And he said, Carole, I'm not going to, I wanted to do a trunk show because I wanted to expose people to costume jewelry. And this gentleman said, Carole, I'm sorry, I won't do a trunk show, but I'm going to give you a department. They gave me a department at Holt Renfrew, and they branded me Carole Tanenbaum Vintage Collection. So in 2006, when I really had a large following, I figured they deserved to see what I feel is the best of my collection. And that's how I started Fabulous Fakes through Madison Press, who is no longer around. But in 4 months' time, the book was sold out. And in the year's time, the book internationally was sold out. It was a real, people were starving for just visuals. But that was kind of a tabletop. It was my selection for my personal collection. And I loved doing it, but I wasn't interested really in doing it again. And then when I saw that I really have to educate the audience for Schreiner, because nothing has ever been written about Schreiner other than a paragraph or two, and he being my favorite designer, I wanted to do a book on him, but I couldn't find anybody to really do the research because he was kind of elusive. It was a very small manufacturer. But a person who was working for me as part of our outfit here said to me one day, why don't you do a book on Schreiner? And I said, I've been thinking about it for years, but I don't want to do another picture book. I want to do a book where people can learn, because I want to show them what to look for, many examples of it. And at this point, I had about 400 pieces of Schreiner. And she said, I'll do the research. I love to do research. And I gave her the permission. She went off to New York. She went to the public library there, and she saw a Schreiner address in the outskirts of New York.
Wow.
And she knocked on the door of this person, and it turned out to be the grandson of Henry Schreiner.
Wow.
And they invited her in, and she's a charming woman, Eve Townsend. She's the one who did all the research on the book, and she's a terrific gal. They loved her. She had repeated visits to them. The only person who was really permitted to spend time with them. And she's the one that gave all the knowledge to the book Schreiner. And now we're completely sold out, but I just reprinted, and the reprints are coming out in February. And now the book was I was selling it for $125 because I was selling my personal stash, but the Chinese community who are very active in the vintage world were purchasing the book in China for $400. So now people will be able to buy it again for $65. And I'm very proud of that, because they really, I mean, it was a small quantity that I did last time, and it's another small quantity this time.
Wow. So why there was a large gap then there's years between the two books? Had you just had it with the picture books and just said, that's it, I'm not doing another book?
I wasn't really interested in doing the picture book, but I felt that it was, again, my duty to my clients there, who I was educating, along the way, to sort of show them what great pieces are. And as I had a wonderful publisher, and they were terrific to work with. And they laid it out in a way that people could understand the design in comparison to others, etc. And I was very happy that I did it, but I had no desire to do another one until Eve came around and said, Carole, we're going to do the book. And that's how that the Schreiner came to being.
So how do you define vintage costume jewelry? How do you define it?
Well, the actual definition is vintage is 40 to 100 years old, and antique is from 100 to 300 years old. But in my operation, we sell from Victorian era to the 80s and 90s, and that's our cutoff. And now we're starting to show contemporary designers who I think are really valid for future collecting, etc. But that's Carole Tanenbaum Vintage decision to focus on that area of time.
Wow. So what do you say if somebody says, well, it's not real? I mean, I have people say that to me. It's not real. It's fake. So
it's a great question. I say to them, yes, it is real. It's real vintage. And if you handed me a $10,000 piece of gemstone and you showed me a wonderful piece of vintage for $10,000, I would probably purchase the vintage because the vintage pieces have historical value as well to me. So I've always been asked that question, Sharon, and it's always been sort of a bone of contention because I really had to educate people that this vintage costume jewelry is one category, like apples and oranges, and gemstone is another. They both happen to be jewelry, but they're both valid in their categories.
So are there people who collect who collect the Schreiner and another who collect the Monet or whatever, and then another group? So you know who?
Yeah, but I don't know who, but they come to me and they say, do you have any Monets? And I love Monet. Actually, he's one of the best kept secrets on the market now because his prices haven't risen in the same way that others have. And I would say, I'll show you a tray of them, and then I would, my staff would photograph a tray and they go, oh, and it at least introduces them to more than one. And that's how we operate our business. People do come to us with very specifics. And most of the time we can show them examples of that. And other times, if I'm not interested in the designer, and I have very few of them, I refer them to somebody else who I know in the field who might have it.
See, now I'm learning a lot here. I mean, Schreiner to me is not a person, a company. Monet is not a person; it's a company. That sort of thing. Right. So it's interesting that they're people, or they were originally people.
They were people, exactly. People with very good eyes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So how did you come to be in business? Like you say, you didn't have to go into business. How did you start a business?
Through Holtz. That's how I started my business because I had no idea that they would have me as a counter in as real estate. I thought that they would have me for 3 weeks because I said that I wanted to expose people. They would have me for 3 weeks and be gone. But he said to me, and it's a very important thing that I sort of pride myself on. He said, the way you are different from other people who have approached me is that you have a singular eye. And your collection is curated by that eye. And I like your eye. And I know your family were collectors. And that's why I am taking you on. And that's a very good point because, I happen to have had the benefit of coming from a family of great collectors, but people who have a very specific eye, and all the pieces they collect are from that eye, and the pieces that they collect happen to be very good pieces. That's a real attribute to their inventory and to their collection. Other people buy lots, a lot, let's say a lot of 50 pieces, and sort of go through it to see which ones are the great, and they sell both. Every piece in my collection I pick personally, and I have a wonderful staff, and they know the collection, etc. But I feel that my collection is known for my eye, and I feel a responsibility in that sense.
Well, that's interesting because different definitions of a good eye come to mind. In that, I have a friend who she's not a dealer, but dealers have told her has a dealer's eye. She can spot the thing in the back of a cabinet. And then I know my father-in-law was a great collector of art, and I didn't like any of it until I saw it framed, and then it was like, oh my God, that's wonderful. So I don't think I have an eye. That's the thing.
But you don't know. Are you a collector?
I'm one of those who has a lot. And I wouldn't say I collect anything. Yes, I
Well,
don't collect anything.
You have an eye for everything that you collect, because if you put it together, somebody in a field that understands that would say, oh, there's a certain rhythm there. There's a certain continuity with what you collect. Your clothing is of a certain area. You're either conservative or you're out there, and then you would choose things that go to your aesthetics, whatever it is. So you might not think you have an eye, but you have a very specific eye. We don't know what it is, but you might look at it that way, and you might find out what it is.
Well, somebody who does collect said to me, exactly what you said, if they put it all together, they could see what I liked or what I collected. But
Sure.
I don't, some people collect, I don't know, like you collect the Schreiner, let's say, but I don't. But I don't have something like that. What happens when somebody comes to you and says, I have a fabulous outfit, I have a great dress, but it needs something, and I want something. I've looked at all the contemporary stuff and there's nothing that pleases me. What do you have?
Well, actually, that's a good part of my business. We do bridal, we do the bride's parents, we do women who are having an event in their family. We do movies, we do television. So we're set up in our operation to meet the needs of almost anybody who asks for it. If a stylist comes in here and wants they're working for a 20s movie, we know exactly what to bring out to her. And so we do a prep for it. She comes in and then she goes through areas that we know we have. And don't forget, we have about 40,000 pieces, but we organize it in such a way that it's very easy for them to see, and it's very easy for us to almost accommodate every request of ours. And we love dealing personally, by the way, because it brings out the child in many people who are a little constricted, or you get a sense of their personality, and you could pick accordingly. And it's very easy for us. We love to do that.
So do people come to you and say, I have a fabulous, let's say, quote unquote, real pin, but it's not enough. It doesn't have the wow factor. Do you bring them something else, or what?
We show them what we feel they could like. And don't forget, Sharon, if somebody comes to us, they'll see about 20 pieces so there's always a piece that they love. Nobody has ever left us without buying something, because we're trained in that, and my staff is trained to understand the person when they're telling them what they need.
Well, how do people find out about your operation? I stumbled on it, let's say. How do people find out about it? I didn't realize it was so large.
It's well, we've been in business for what, about 40 years now, but my name is out there because I've been in the field. I'm very generous to what other dealers. They're very generous to me. The public knows me through the various clubs that I belong to now. I belong to the Sherman Club, who's a Canadian designer. I belong to the Schreiner Club and various clubs. So you show pictures of what you have, so they see they see what I have, and they love it. I don't let a lot of people into the house because I don't feel safe with everything that I have here, but we do a lot of business on the iPad. My staff will get a tray together, put together a professional photograph, and show the person who's looking for starters, and that they'll always be able to pick something from it. Also, don't forget, I've been in a lot of magazines and newspaper articles. So those public, those public stands are very important for me. And a lot of the stylists use my pieces and also my story to inspire.
I think the big leap that a lot of people had to make as a dealer or people who sold jewelry is that I've heard people say, I have to hold it, I have to see it, I have to feel the piece of jewelry to know it, to see if I want it. So have you had that? Have you faced that?
Well, locally, people have asked if they could come down after we show them the pieces, and generally, if we know where they're coming from, we permit them to come up and have fun. But but internationally, no. I have a very large Asian clientele, and they buy strictly from pick photos. I have a very large Russian population, and Paris, Italy, and I think they're more savvy than the average collector, and so they know exactly what they want, and it's very easy to satisfy them. With the Asian community, which actually has been very voracious collectors over the last 5 years, they're very specific with what they want. There's about only a handful of designers that they love. But what happens with that is when we get new pieces in, we know who they are.
There's a handful of pieces that designers, that these people, the Asians or Russians, or know that they want. What you had mentioned, like, you also have some emerging designers. Who do you think the emerging designers are? Are they costume or are they real?
Never real. Like I'm really in the costume business, but emerging designers are contemporary designers that people don't know about, such as Raphael of Montreal, Vidal of Montreal, Thomas Mann, who is a real has really a charming eye and does real playful, but sophisticated playful jewelry. Colette Harmon is another emerging artist, and there are other old timers that still have not made the let's say the mark yet, the money mark. Those are Avon and Art and Fluenza, and these Napier. There's a wonderful, like, telephone book size book on, and yet people haven't really discovered him yet. The prices are very reasonable, and he's a wonderful designer. He was a wonderful designer of the 50s. And he's somebody who isn't really there yet. I mean, he's dead, but he deserves to be recognized. And then there are areas of collecting like copper, some of the great studio pieces in copper. Whenever I see them, I grab them. And wood pieces that were parallelly designed at the same time as Bakelite. And the wood pieces are really like folk art. They're wonderful. Rarely are they more than $125. I bought them for like $40. And each one of them I wouldn't trade for my $3,000 pieces, because they really charm me. So there are areas you can start buying and worry about.
And I'm probably using the term that you hate, which is real versus. Carole, thank you so much for being with us today. We've learned so much. I know I have learned a lot, and I'm ready to go, oh my God, I've overlooked so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Sharon.
We will have photos posted on the website. Please head to thejewelryjourney.com to check them out.
Thank you again for listening. Please leave us a rating and review so we can help others start their own jewelry journey.